This is Think Smart with TMFG, your weekly podcast of what's newsworthy and relevant to everyday Canadians. I'm your host, Senior Financial Advisor, Mike Connon of Assante Capital Management. So today what I was going to talk about, John, advertisements that may not be true. Now, we've seen a few of these over times. I'm driving my car, and I listen to, usually on the way to work, I listen to 680 or 640.
Yep.
And I'm not going to go to names because we'll get in trouble if we name names. But there's one advertisement from a mutual fund company that gave the idea, I guess the main idea, if your money is not moving, it's not growing.
Yeah.
And it was about promoting active management. And you hear the advertisement, everything sounds good. They have the announcer with a much better voice than I do doing the advertisement. So it's this deep bellowing voice, and you think, oh, that guy sounds really smart.
Yeah.
But then I'm thinking about it. I'm like, this is against everything we've learned from all the empirical data that we've researched over all these years. We've used all the educated people from Dimensional to teach us about this over time. And we found that, if you look at things like the S&P 500 or even just the broad indexes of the U.S. or any international markets or Canadian markets, it's very difficult to outperform them. And all you really have to do is not mess with things.
Yeah. It's incredibly difficult to do. I mean, the data kind of leans more towards the belief that about, maybe 10 to 15% of companies or mutual fund companies over the last 20 years actually do outperform, which that's not, if you go to a casino, you're not trying to gamble on the game that pays out 10 to 15% of the time. It's a very difficult thing to do. And mainly one of the reasons why it's incredibly difficult is when you do take part of active management, there's a lot of buying and selling. And within these transactions, there's a lot of fees also that become associated with it. So that already puts you behind the eight ball of just keeping up with the market.
Yet people go to casinos and people use active managers.
Exactly.
So no matter what you tell them, you can prove them to them that you're going to lose money in the casino over time, but they're still going to go and sit at the slot machines and put their money in there to get that done.
That's exactly it.
So, that's one thing I found that's a recent advertisement. I think that's so false. The buy and hold strategy has been a great strategy over time, and it's been difficult for active management to outperform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Next thing is this one of my favorite ones because we're going to go to the financial ones first. And this is from many years ago. I think it's about 30 years ago.
Yeah,
and
it's been a while.
It came from one of the life insurance companies, and it was called Freedom 55. And I think it was the best advertisement campaign ever because it's still in everyone's mind to this day is you have the right to retire at 55 years old, right? So this is something that put in everyone's mind. They never really went through the whole details on how it was going to work. It was just a statement. At 55, you should be free. You shouldn't have to work anymore. But again, it was a great advertising scheme. But over time, we fought this because people sometimes think they can retire at 55 without doing the planning ahead of time. Be it the advertisement was about doing the planning ahead of time to be able to give you that freedom. But it's not that easy to do nowadays, is it?
It really isn't. And to your point, I still have people to this day coming to me and saying, well, I want to retire by 55. You've heard of Freedom 55. And, it becomes very difficult. Even with the correct planning, that means, people are living a lot longer. That might mean 40 years of your life of being able to live off of your investments, if you're into your 90s. That's an incredibly difficult thing to do, especially because if you're retiring at 55, that probably means you only had 30 to 35 years of actual earning experience where you had the opportunity to save. So the numbers tend to not add up, but kudos to this marketing company.
Whoever came up with it was a genius. It's I watched the thing and somehow there's all these things. I watched the one routine on the Yeti cooler on how they sell these. And people still want to buy these Yetis, but they may be the most awkward, useless thing I've ever seen. They can keep ice for 2 weeks, but you buy a giant cooler and holds about 3 cans of pop inside it because it's all insulation on the side. They're not easy to move anywhere. They're hard. They're
incredibly expensive.
They're incredibly expensive, and but the advertisement's there. Yeah. What's some other things you found?
Yeah. There's I'm not sure how far we can go into using names, but there was an automotive company. German automotive. You can do your research at home. They claim to have clean diesel. And there was this very big campaign claiming that their diesel engines was incredibly clean and low emission. And sure enough, during the tests, they were able to maintain this status. But as soon as that became a sold car and consumers started driving it on the road, It wasn't very clean, and that caused a lot of ripple effect within the automotive industry.
Yeah, I believe from my memory they actually had it so when the car went on a hoist, it would change the settings of the engine.
That's
which
correct.
was insanity that a company would actually do that. But again, you get their advertising, you fall for that, and yeah, it came out not to be as true as they originally said.
Yeah.
Other examples you've seen?
Yeah, there was another good shoemaker, I guess, that had a shoe that would help you lose weight and be a bit more toned than other competitor shoes. And just due to the structure of the shoe in itself, they had a lot of famous celebrities that played a role with it. And sure enough, over time, you really begin to learn that that was in fact not factual. And this company actually ended up with losing millions in lawsuits. So it's you seem to see a common theme here where they want to be a fitness program or they want to provide a certain service, when in reality it doesn't really do much.
They seem to survive, and now they got the slip-on shoes, right?
Yeah.
So they focus the area in a different way. Same as Lululemon is not going to eventually make you get thinner.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
It's out there, and
spandex could do its best, but at the end of the day,
at the end of the day,
so far.
it can only help so much. You need a gym membership to go with them. What are some other examples we've seen?
Yeah, a huge one was tobacco industry. Nowadays, obviously, tobacco, you're not allowed to advertise to the same degree as maybe you were able to in the 90s and in the 80s and the 70s and so on. One of my favorite campaigns, I had done some research on this one because I frankly just couldn't believe it was true. Just imagine having it go on nowadays. But the campaign rode that more doctors smoke this certain type of cigarette. And you really think about it, they just hired actors to put on a doctor's white coat and pose there with some cigarettes. They had the healthiest cigarette on the market, apparently.
Yeah, back in the 50s and 60s, cigarettes were huge, and there was huge money. The Surgeon General came out with an announcement that cigarette smoking was bad. And it was funny, if you've ever watched that show Mad Men, half it was based on that whole situation, how to deal with that crisis. Because from an advertisement point of view, you have a real crisis on your hand. And they tried to repurpose the whole idea of what smoking was about.
Yeah.
And they went and it was no longer about which smoking was bad. They accepted that they're all bad. It was which one would be the most cool. And I guess as you say, the Joe Camel was the big cool piece that was putting the advertisements out of there. So that went on for many years. And right now you still see even advertisements. It's funny, if you go to the U.S., and this may be back a few years ago, but have you ever noticed when you go to the U.S. you can't buy, or used to not be able to buy, alcohol-based coolers?
Okay.
So if you buy like we have something called hard lemonade up here. If you buy hard lemonade in the States, they're generally either beer-based or wine-based. They don't have any vodka-based coolers in the States. The reason why the advertising wouldn't let them advertise any type of liquor. You could advertise malt beverages or wines. So all the coolers in the States, people used to love coming up here because they said, well, your drinks like that taste so much better because they were vodka-based rather than malt-based. But that was the reason. It was all based on advertising. So we can see how important advertising makes. Because they couldn't advertise in the States, they weren't even willing to produce it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we've seen countless examples of this. Obviously, the most successful marketers, a lot of these were very successful campaigns. But at the end of the day, this just goes to show us that, what marketers are putting out or what advertising agents are putting out isn't necessarily what's going to be best for you. That's why it becomes very difficult to kind of navigate through the noise in terms of, especially in the financial market, what would be best for you. So
I guess what it comes down to is I love marketing. I love advertising. I think they're great. I think they're the greatest minds. I love watching how they come up with things. But when you're watching those advertisements, just remember to think deeply. They're actually not. They're not looking after your own good. They're looking to sell a product, and you got to keep that in the back of your mind. Well, that brings us to another episode of Think Smart with TMFG, and have a great day.